Hey guys, this is Cody, and starting today, I'm going to be counting down my top favorite movies of all time. Now, I know I've done videos like this before talking about my favorite movies, but I've never done one quite like this. As you guys probably know, back in December, I talked about my top favorite Christmas movies. In October, I talked about my top favorite horror films. And I've done this last year where I've divided them up. And, I've talked about like my favorite horror films in a list, my favorite Christmas movies in a list. And then I've done videos where I just talk about favorite movies, but I don't include any horror or Christmas movies because I've already done lists on them. And so, I've never included them in my top favorite movies type list. And also, I usually do top 10 favorite movie lists. Well, this is going to be a lot different. For this list, I am going to be talking about my top favorite movies of all time, period. It does not matter what genre, what genre. I'm talking about all different types of films, and that includes comedies, action, family films, Christmas movies, Halloween, horror films, pretty much any film that I love that's my favorite I'm going to be talking about. And this is going to be a very diverse and probably definitive list of my top favorite movies of all time. Now, like I said, I've never done this type of video before where I've talked about every type of favorite movie that I have from any genre, and this is going to be a massive undertaking. There's so many movies that I absolutely love that I want to talk about, and this is going to be a multiple part video. I don't know how many I'm going to be doing, and it's just going to be a very, very wide range of films. So for the first part in this series I'm doing, all the movies I'm going to talk about in this part and the next part are not going to be in any particular order. And the reason why is because it's very hard for me to start on if I start on my top 30 films, it's kind of hard for me to say, well, this is number 30 and this is number 29 and 28. It's kind of hard for me to do. So for the first 2 or 3 parts in this series, all the movies I'm going to be talking about are in no particular order. However, the last 10 movies I talk about are going to be my definitive top 10. And this list is, it's pretty difficult to talk, like I said, it's kind of difficult to put them in an order because, some movies I may like better than others, while some movies I think I like just as much as another film, like they're tied. So I thought it would be a lot easier to do it where the first 2 or 3 videos, all the movies I talk about are in no particular order, but the last 10 movies I talk about are my definitive top 10 favorite movies. And yeah, like I said, it's very difficult to do a list like this because for me, and I think for everyone else, your favorite movie, when you talk about your favorite films, I think from the first time you see them until now, they've always been your favorite films. I think movies that you loved when 10 years ago that was your favorite movie, the odds are still going to remain your favorite films. And every time you watch them, you always have you always get a feeling, that you watch them. You always have a connection with these films. Either it's the cast, it's got a great cast, the acting, the characters, you relate to the characters so much, and you feel like that they're a part of you, and that's what I think a favorite movie is for people. It's a movie that you feel is a part of you. It's a movie that's in your soul, in your heart, and it's a movie that no matter how old you get, you'll always have a soft spot for that film, or it'll always be your favorite. Or if you're sitting down in life and you're bored, or maybe life's not going a certain way for you, or whatever, you'll always turn to these films because they're films that you absolutely love and you relate so much to them, and you just have a feeling and a connection with these films. And that's what I look at when I look at these films. Now, of course, some of these movies are, although they're in my favorite films, some of them are they're over the top, they're kind of goofy. I like films for different reasons. Sometimes I don't connect with a movie at all. I'm just putting it in here because I find it kind of I find it amusing, and it's like if it's a comedy I watch all the time, then I'll do that. But for the most part, all the movies I'm going to be talking about, I've connected to in some way, and they're sort of a part of me. And if you're a movie collector and a movie lover, you know what I'm talking about. So without further ado, I've gone too long in this introduction. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm not going to talk about any of these movies in particular. I'm mostly just going to show the case, and say the title, and then move on. Also, if I'm talking about a movie and I also love the sequel, I'm not going to hold up the sequel. I'm just going to say, oh, I like this one and I like the second one as well, because I don't want these videos to be incredibly long, but they are going to be long. So anyway, without further ado, let's get started. First movie, Natural Born Killers. This is the director's cut. I've not seen the R-rated cut, so I'm not sure what's different, but yeah, amazing film. Now, this is the first movie where, like I said, some of these movies are movies that I just grew up watching, and I always enjoy going back to them, but they're not really, like, great movies. This one's Slappy and the Stinkers. This is just a fun kids movie about some kids that become friends with a sea lion. Now for the first horror movie on my list. Children of the Corn. This was almost in my top 10 list, but I decided to leave it out. But yeah, the first one. I also absolutely love the second one. The third one is pretty good, and I think the fourth one was the last of like was the last of the good ones in the series. Although I do enjoy all of them, I found the seventh one to be kind of boring. The next one is a true horror classic, The Changeling, such a masterpiece. And I gotta ask, why is this movie not on Blu-ray? Up next, classic comedy right here, Tommy Boy, Chris Farley, David Spade. I love both those actors, and yeah, it's just a great comedy right here. And rest in peace, Chris. Now the next one is a movie I did not grow up with these characters. I actually saw these characters after the series was over, unfortunately, but Beavis and Butthead Do America. And this was actually the first thing I ever saw related to Beavis and Butthead. I knew about the series, but I never watched the show when I was younger. It wasn't until I got older, and then I saw this movie with my cousin, and then I actually started watching the episodes. So I don't have like a nostalgia factor for this movie or for the show, but I still really enjoyed the film. Up next, Elephant, a film by Gus Van Sant. I have this sort of fascination with school shootings in a way. I know that might sound very strange, but it's just something that affects me. And this movie, I think, is one of the most realistic. Not only is it one of the most realistic films about school shootings, I think it's one of the most realistic high school films, because you know, this movie, the acting and everything is so good that it almost doesn't really seem like it's acting. It almost seems like it's real teenagers, and it really is. It's just real teenagers, you know, going through high school. And I love movies that deal with, you know, high school and stuff like that, because that was it was a very difficult time for me. And now time for something fun. Back to the Future. Definitely one of the top best movies in my opinion. I know everybody loves this film. It's a classic movie. I also really enjoyed the second one as well, and the third one is okay. I understand why people don't like it. I personally enjoy it, just not as much as the first two. Now, I have not seen the second one, but I love the first Short Circuit movie. It was actually the first, like, sort of robot becoming friends with a human type movie that I saw. I think I saw Short Circuit before I saw E.T. I'm not sure why I'm making that comparison. I guess it's a sort of a creature type thing, becoming friends with a human, and this is basically a robot. But I've always really enjoyed the first Short Circuit film. I've always loved it. Up next, we got the first Christmas type film, 8 Crazy Nights. Really enjoy this one. There's a lot of humor in this that's pretty immature, but it actually does become pretty heartwarming at the end. Up next, childhood favorite right here, The Indian in the Cupboard. I love these Columbia TriStar films. I didn't grow up with this movie as much. I think I saw this movie when I was 11 or 12 maybe, and I've always enjoyed this one. Not as much as the other films that Columbia TriStar put out, which I will talk about later, but I still have always enjoyed that one. And now this is one of those movies where I said some people are going to look at me and be like, what? The reason why I look at it as one of my favorites because it's just so over the top and it's dumb and it's just a fun comedy movie that shouldn't be taken seriously. Dude, Where's My Car? I know a lot of people hate this movie, but I mean it's just a stupid comedy, you know, and I wouldn't consider this a movie this isn't one of those movies where, like I said, I have a connection with it. You know, it's just a movie that I just enjoy going back to. So. And now, here's a comedy movie that I'm sure everybody loves, Airplane. Can't go wrong. One of the funniest movies of all time. I think it's like in the top 5 or top 10. Yeah, it's one of the top 10 funniest movies ever made by the American Film Institution. So yeah, Airplane. And now, probably one of my favorite stoner comedies, and this is one movie that laugh out loud. Even my dad loved it when he saw it when it was like brand new. Cheech and Chong, Up in Smoke, probably one of the best or the best stoner comedy. Of course, I saw this movie years after it was made, but it's still one of the funniest movies, I think. Now, time for the horror film on my list. This was a little creature movie, Chud. This is not one movie that I grew up watching or anything. I actually saw this movie years ago, so it's a newer film for me. I think I saw it, I want to say 2010, 2011, around that time, but from the first time I watched it, I knew I was going to love it, so Chud. And then here's a war film that a lot of people don't seem to enjoy as well, but I've always liked it. But Behind Enemy Lines, this was the first type of war film I saw. I saw this one, and then I saw films like Pearl Harbor and Saving Private Ryan. So, you know, this is one of the first war films I really enjoyed because it wasn't overly gory or sad or anything, I guess. You know, and I'm not a huge fan of, like, depressing war films, unless they're done very, very well. It usually depends on what it is. Plus, I haven't seen that many war films. And the last movie that I'm going to be talking about is a movie that's like one of the biggest movies ever made. It made, you know, so much money on Titanic. And I know that for some people this movie might be overrated for some, but this is a classic movie, you know, and it's one movie that I've always loved. So I decided to put it on my list. Anyway, guys, that was part 1, and I know I talked about a lot of movies in this. And like I said, you know, some of these movies are films that they're not really going to be films that are really great. They're just films I go back to, like Dude, Where's My Car? But at the same time, there are some movies on this list that I feel a connection to, and I feel I have a huge love for some of these films. And they're movies that ever since I was younger I watched, and I watched them, you know, some of them I've been watching for years, ever since I first watched them. And some of these are ones that they're some of the first movies I even remember watching, so I have a big connection with them. And you guys know what I mean by, you know, when you have a connection with a movie, or when you feel a movie like it's a movie that's close to your heart. But, you know, anyway, guys, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing. I'll be doing a lot more videos in this series. I'm hoping to do maybe 4 or 5 parts in this video series, and I'm going to try to get at least 2 or 3 of them up this weekend. So expect another video either later on today or 2 videos tomorrow. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Let me know what you guys think about these movies, and let me know what are your favorite films. You know, what are movies that you feel a connection with, that whenever you think about good movies, you know, what movies do you think about, and what films do you have a huge love for? Anyway, guys, thanks for watching this first part of my favorite movies of all time list, and I'll see you all in the next one.